Let me welcome Dion Hinchcliffe, Vice President and Principal Analyst for Constellation Research from the United States of America. Dion is a global influencer of CIOs, and he will have a keynote. Often, have we reached early maturity in cybersecurity or something new happens? Good. Dion, please come up on the stage. A nice welcome. Come on, you can do better. Good.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So first of all, I appreciate the invitation to come and speak. Like Mr. Huberman earlier, I'm based out of Washington, D.C. I work primarily with chief information officers and chief information security officers around the world, trying to get those two tracks to work together to build a future. And as part of my research, I'm a researcher. I'm a principal analyst at Constellation Research. We're based out of Silicon Valley, ranked top 5 in terms of analyst firms and the industry. And I'm also an executive fellow at the Tuck School of Business for their Center for Digital Strategies. And that's where I work with chief information officers who have hundreds of millions and in many cases billions of dollars in IT that they're supposed to be using to build our future. Along the way, they have to keep it all safe. And so I work at a very high level with what's the strategy going to be over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. What are the big moving blocks? What are the points of investment? And I've seen a pattern emerging that I saw happen 15 years ago with enterprise architecture, which I'm an enterprise architect by background. My job is to find patterns, big important ones that say, if we understand this pattern, it will unlock value or it will protect us. And now I see the same pattern happening with cybersecurity. So I have a lot of information here. Some of it is just to inform you, but all of it is also to make my case. Are we reaching an important place in cybersecurity where we have a mature practice that if we just did everything that we know today, our organizations, our institutions, our countries would be safe? Or are we about to enter a brand new cycle? Things like generative AI, quantum computing, which could make a lot of our security protections worthless. Insider threats, which we don't seem to know how to stop at all. Are we going to enter a new cycle with these as they get bigger? I'm going to try and answer the question for you. And it turns out that we might even have a choice. So I regularly survey our CIO network. We have 1,300 CIOs. They're all leading CIOs, Fortune 500, Global 2000, Europe, Asia, United States, a little bit of South America. And I asked them, what are your top budget priorities? Pick one. What's your top budget priority? And this is the answer here. And you see that the top one is digital transformation. 77% say that's their top priority, where they're spending their money on IT, the most important place they're spending it, because that's the future. To say, I need to transform my organization with the digital art of the possible, move into the future. A close second, in fact, statistically the same. This margin of error is about 3.5%. So they're the same. My most important investment is cybersecurity, is keeping us safe. One is about going faster into the future, and one is about locking everything down and making it safe. How can we do both? Can you do both? And that's one of the other challenges we're facing. We're all being asked to go fast into the future and go faster, but cybersecurity is not about doing things innovative as quickly as possible. In fact, that's a threat, to do things with haste in a cyber secure world. So this is part of the patterns that I want to unlock for you to say, are we reaching a new place? So these are the key trends I believe are identifying whether we're reaching a new state of maturity or not, whether we're entering a new cycle or not. Let's see if my case holds. So most of us know the top cyber trends, right? Greatly expanding attack surfaces because of IoT. Identity as a key to defense. Everyone's going to get hardened digital IDs. Vendor consolidation. So it's kind of a reverse scale. Everything's being sucked up and aggregated into cybersecurity suites. We'll talk about that. Cybersecurity mesh. We have to make all of our defenses work together in concert. If you've ever been in IT, you know integration is the hardest thing. Distributed decisions. be able to put the hands of what to do about a cyber attack to the people closest and most able to defend it. And what's next beyond awareness? We'll talk about that. But one of the real issues we face at the top level is that as new practices, new tools, new techniques, and new threats and attacks emerge, our budgets are skyrocketing. Now, this is data from the United States, but it holds everywhere. It's a global data set. We're seeing double, and in a few cases, triple-digit year-over-year increases in cybersecurity budgets. How long can you keep that up? Well, you can't. And that's one of my arguments, is what we're doing today is not sustainable. We need to either end this cycle and find a new way of working that addresses the upcoming threats, or we need to figure out some way to make this far more efficient. Now, of course, the big topic today is generative AI. I think many people are hoping that generative AI in cyber defense is going to cause this budget to drop. I don't see any evidence of that, but the reasoning seems sound. But something has to happen. Something will break. We can't keep doing this. We need a new strategy. And that's, what I'm trying to make a case for here. But the stakes keep growing. The largest data breaches in history, this slide I have to update all the time. So, because the CIO is trying to do the digital transformation and the Chief Information Security Officer is trying to do the protection. And one's trying to move fast and one's trying to say, let's lock everything down. In the meantime, more and more damage is occurring all the time. And in fact, the attackers are getting better than the defenders. We heard earlier today about, the ecosystems where you can actually go, there's service bureaus for cyber attacks where you can pay somebody on the dark web to attack anything or get any piece of information. So the stakes keep growing and makes the budgets grow and makes the prioritization. Cybersecurity shouldn't be a #1 budget priority. It's just because it has to be. That's the only reason. So that's a very serious challenge. And along the way, all this security makes all this technology very hard to use. It's one of the top hindrances. So I do a lot of advice on employee experience, because employee experience is becoming mostly digitized. What we do for our work is mostly in a digital realm, a digital world. And one of the top feedback we get in survey after survey is that these IT measures, these security measures, are too strong. They're too hard to use. Multi-factor authentication, constantly changing passwords that have to be this long, right? Those are very significant challenges. And the new regimes we're going to bring down, like zero trust, which I'm a big believer in zero trust, are only going to make this more severe. We'll never be able to talk to anybody pretty soon because talking to people isn't safe in a digital world. We also have to layer on privacy laws. I have a list of the ones that I can track. There's more than this, though. Right? Many smaller countries also have them, and most digital activities have a global presence, and that's their advantage, is that you can reach the whole world. But soon, maybe you can't. Privacy laws, zero trust, which I just mentioned, are going to suck a lot of the value out of all this IT and all this digital that we have. That's a really significant challenge. And the rise of mesh architectures, where we're going to bring all these things together, all these technologies into a consolidated regime, is actually a good idea. And it's easier now to integrate things than ever before. Integration platform as a service and many other technologies are amazing. But in general, that puts a lot of work on cybersecurity professionals who are spending most of their time fighting attacks, not building architectures. There's no time or budget to build the quality architectures. Yet we need, if you don't integrate your cybersecurity tools, you have gaps in your cyber defense. And we can't have gaps. And we need to get to a place where we have zero gaps, and we can keep zero gaps in our system. No matter how fast it goes, no gaps emerge. That's the dream state, but it's required. If you have any gaps, the attackers will find it. Now, this is a good trend. We see it mostly. Most CIOs are very leery about having too few vendors because then they have no influence over them. There's only giant vendors that you can't control and move very slowly. But in general, we have far too many cybersecurity tools. I'm sure all of you that have looked at the available solutions are shocked to discover there are thousands of them. Thousands, and they don't work together. So some consolidation is good, not down to 3 major suites, but consolidation is a broad trend, and we see it's happening at double-digit pace. That's good. That's going to help, although it creates consistency of solutions. If there's a flaw in one, you know, we're very familiar with some of the incidents, the major ones in recent years, where the cybersecurity vendor was the threat vector. There's actually security and obscurity. Having too many vendors, or a lot of vendors, is difficult in one ways, but it's also a little bit safe. So this is something we'll have to balance in any future strategy. Pretty soon, most companies, and many are now today already, be rated on their risk that they're taking on. They're not spending enough on cybersecurity. They've had known breaches. They've failed their audits, whatever. By 2025, 2/3 of all organizations will have risk ratings in their contracts. You won't be able to do business unless your company is reaching a certain threshold of quality. That's going to drive up budgets again. That's going to drive up a lot of attention. And I think it's important in transparency. But this just means that we're going to ride the curve we're already on, the unsustainable curve. We can't keep riding that curve. We need to change something. Risk ratings are going to make that worse. Ransomware regulation, you know, putting all your company's data in a blockchain. That's already possible, and I actually work with some clients who are doing that. That's remarkable. So you can't steal information that's permanently encrypted and stored in a place that can never be compromised. That's great. But it may become, something like that may become law soon. And so we're seeing that 30% of countries will have ransomware regulations. What does this do? Same thing. It pushes us into an unsustainable place if we keep doing what we're doing today. There's too many tools, too many types of attacks, too many solutions to address them, and then privacy laws, regulation on top of that. And then we have DevOps, which is, we moved from Agile. I used to be an Agile coach in Washington, D.C. on some very big projects. We didn't even know if Agile could work on a big project, but you can do it. It's not as fast as smaller projects. And now we have expanded that envelope to DevOps. So it's beyond just development. It's that collaborative envelope, that high-speed, fast feedback loop envelope is expanded to ops. And then we discovered that doing things not in a security-first way is bad. And DevOps does not have a security focus. Maybe some teams put a security step, a security validation, or security review step in DevOps. And most organizations are looking at adopting DevOps. And now to address this, we've put this high-friction process in the middle, the security step. So we now have DevSecOps, which is considered best practice. Although when I look at the organizations, our CIOs, that are doing DevSecOps, the sec part, the security part, is too much friction. It takes almost all the speed out of DevOps, because now you're putting security reviews and security first in the middle of your high-speed innovation process. So this is something we have to sort out. I see very few people talking about it, and then people saying, well, DevOps doesn't work. And increasingly, it's because we put this high-friction security process. It tells us what we're doing is not sustainable. We have to think about security in a different way. And I'm going to try and propose that before we get done here. Cloud native. We finally have a future architecture model that is probably going to be the future for the next 5 or 10 years. And it will evolve even beyond that. So cloud native, if you're not familiar with it, is, you know, microservices, containers, all the pure architecture that came out of the hyperscale growth phenomenon over the last 10 years. We've learned how to build galactic scale applications that can host 1 billion people at once. Well, those patterns were then described as cloud native, saying these are the architectures that will let you build the systems of the future. Here are the patterns and principles. And 30% of organizations say that, well, they're at least somewhat cloud native today. They have some containers or some, right? Maybe some microservices, but nobody is 100%. And eventually we'll have a higher level of coverage. Guess what isn't included in any kind of standardized way? Cybersecurity. We don't have a sustainable pattern for cybersecurity in the cloud native future, which is where everyone, if you talk to cloud developers, which is the majority of all new development, Same problem. They have a lot of things that were grafted on. I thought Huberman made an incredibly important point about internet standards. They were built for a different time when we didn't have bad actors like we do today. We didn't have criminal ecosystems who are sharing knowledge and building large attack toolkits to go after these technologies which were never designed to be highly secure. They were never intended to be, and it was never built that way. Cloud native, guess what? We did the same thing all over again. There is security models inside cloud native. They are not what we need for the future. So that's another, oops, so we have DevSecOps isn't built for this, what we want to do, fast innovation. Cloud native, which we thought was the future of architecture, of cloud architecture, same problem, does not have the degree of cybersecurity or anything close to close the gaps I just mentioned. Next hot topic is operational resilience. We learned a lot about this with COVID and having to change things very rapidly, and also protecting all those, our attack surface area multiplied by 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. Everybody's home became part of our businesses. So we needed much better operational resilience and operational diversity too. Protecting 1,000 different places that are all individually different in terms of their physical location and often their configuration is a huge challenge. We see a lot of investment though. That's a big item now, a growing item in not just the cybersecurity budget, but disaster recovery and business continuity for the whole business is in this. This is good. This is one of the better happy trends I can report to you. I'm bringing a lot of unfortunate news, but this is one of the good places where we're seeing strength. But it has to work with all of the privacy laws and all the digital regulations that we're talking about. And we see the bad actors are fighting back, and a lot of them are state funded. Let's be clear. They're too well organized. Even when they're brought down, another one just like it pops back up. Some of our CIOs have horror stories to report that they will never report in public. Lives lost due to things like ransomware and attacks, revenge attacks in some cases, that we have to deal with. What we're doing with cybersecurity and how slow most organizations are able to move, even with massive budgets, is letting the bad actors fight back. Now, the good news is the Security Operations Center is now the best it's ever been. We have I'd argue that it's excessively sophisticated. And one of the points I'm going to make here before we're done is that complexity is the enemy. And cybersecurity is becoming too complicated. And the Security Operations Center, I would say, is too specialized. Almost everything we're doing is maybe too specialized to be able to get the coverage that we need. We need some way of increasing the coverage, closing the gaps, and moving quicker, not putting friction into innovation, which is going to kill our companies. We may protect our companies to death with these excessively sophisticated approaches that may be at the wrong level of abstraction. So we'll revisit that in just a second. So along all of this, especially if you're in public sector, is zero trust, which is now in Washington, D.C., it's mandated. They keep moving the date, but it's an approach to say we're not going to trust anything. Before, you could talk to everyone by default. In this new world, you can only talk to the people that you identify up front, and everyone else cannot speak to you. And it worked, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that works. That works. It kills a lot of the value of the network where we can reach out to all these people we never knew we needed to be engaging with, but that also invites attackers. Now we know that's leaving the door open. The way the internet was designed is to leave the door open so anyone can come and talk to you. And that's where, if you have bad actors, that lets the bad guys in. Zero Trust says no. Not only do we shut the door, but when we let something in, we go thank you and we shut the door immediately. And every time they knock again, we don't assume it's the same person. We look through the door and see, are you the same person? Hold your credentials up to the peephole, and then I'll take that next packet. That's the future. It has lots of performance implications. And guess what? None of our standards and none of our network stacks are designed for zero trust, even though it is probably the most effective regime we have right now. Everyone has to go zero trust. And in the public sector in the United States, it's mandatory. It's well defined what you have to do. Guess what? You actually can't buy everything you need it to do. There doesn't even exist except in a handful if you have to kind of build your own stack. And most organizations, guess what? Not prepared to build their own stack that's fully zero trust. So lots of work there. All the 80% of organizations say yes, they're going to do zero trust. They'll eventually get there. It'll take 5 or 10 years, and it will take 5 or 10 years. And we will. We'll get network stacks. That's not a problem. We'll get there, and they'll not be trusted, and they'll take a lot of performance because they're constantly checking everything all the time. But we'll make that work too. That's not a problem. And so I believe the practice of zero trust is probably a piece of the foundation of any future. Getting off of our unsustainable path, zero trust is most likely one of the things that will take us there. And will require completely redoing everything in our 7-layer, if you're in IT, we got to rip out the whole bottom of the stack and put a zero trust one in that actually works, cannot be compromised. I was just in DC at a major event, and we were talking about what the level of investment is going to be trillions of dollars for organizations to move to zero trust. But that's probably where we need to go. And that's a network where the door is shut all the time unless somebody you know sends you a piece of information. And then maybe you'll accept it. But there's another undeniable pattern in the trends. One of these is cyber, and the other one is artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, right now, the good guys are going to have the resources and power to use AI to fight attacks. Eventually, the bad guys are going to use AI against us too. But it's not clear they have enough resources to do. We might actually get the power. This might be another path to sustainability with cyber is AI. I actually believe that now. I think we'll be able to keep the upper hand. It's going to be really expensive, but we'll do it. We can nationalize some of those types of things. AI ops is the big topic. How do we, my prediction, and I'm not the only one, I was comparing some notes at the speaker's dinner and other people agree, 95% of all operations in IT and cybersecurity will be automated by 2030, 95%. Of course, and that's even with a huge rise in cyber attacks. And artificial intelligence will do everything that humans can't do. And it will learn everything that humans can do, pretty much. So most things will be automated. That's AI ops. And it's going to grow into a massive industry in short order. Now that we have very powerful, democratized AI. It's great. It can fight hundreds of thousands of incidents per hour. And it can learn and teach itself to fight new ones, to detect and fight new ones. I think AI is going to be one of the most significant trends in cyber. But along with zero trust, we have this countervailing trend. And I noticed it, I was in Lithuania a month ago, and they're riding this curve, the decentralization of everything, decentralized finance, blockchain, but we've had it before. These are all the things that, we used to centralize everything in a data center. Now we distribute it out in the cloud. We used to put everything in the cloud. Now we have edge with IoT, which makes, IoT is one of the biggest threat vectors there is. Decentralization is here to stay, and it's going to be one of the largest trends, but it also is going to push us back into the unsustainable path of cybersecurity. Our threat vectors, our attack surface areas are going to get 1,000, 10,000 times, 1,000,000 times bigger. We don't know. But there's so much power in decentralization that it's an inevitable trend. And so all of this is a class of problem. I've seen this before. I lived this before in the world of IT, where we suddenly were completely overwhelmed by the demand for digitizing everything instantly, and nobody had any patience for backlogs anymore. And the thing is, we live now in what I call the exponential era. And if you are being affected by an exponential trend, like your attack surface area growing at an exponential rate, you can't use linear techniques to fight it. Yet that's what we're going to do. We're going to try and budget our way into fighting exponential problems. I have news for you. I've lived this, where I've fought this battle for a decade and a half. You will lose. We cannot do what we're doing today. The problem is scaling non-linearly, but we're using linear organization, linear budgeting, linear processes to fight it, and it doesn't work. And so we learned that there's this famous actually know Scott Brinker myself, he came up with this Martek's law. Technology changes exponentially, but management and organizations change logarithmically if you're extraordinarily lucky, by the way, mostly linearly. So the power laws that drive the digital world don't work using our linear approaches. That's one of the things we learned. We learned that we fight fire with fire. Use nonlinear approaches like AI, for example, or zero trust, which is, again, nonlinear because of the tremendous increase in performance to check every single security request and check every single packet against a large list of computers you might want, millions. I've seen zero trust network stacks have 1 million IP addresses loaded into the NIC card, right? And every request is checked against that. That is, however, fighting a nonlinear problem with a nonlinear solution. All right, so this will be one of my, I just updated this, that's up to the minute. So these are the cyber domains: users, devices, automation, analytics, apps, data, and the network. This is where we were around 2010, right? Simple, basic things, right? So we first got multi-factor authentication, network segmentation, things like that. And then we started to get things like DevSecOps, real orchestration, micro-segmentation became a thing. By 2016, we had new high practice value. Most people aren't even doing this, and we added that, some of these things, encrypting everything at rest, for example. Least access privilege. And then by 2020, we had gotten these very advanced capabilities. Policy-based event management, so we don't flood our SOC staff with 1 million notifications, right? Little things like that. And now we're here. This is the latest, my latest cybersecurity maturity model. This is what everyone has to do. And I've designed this such that I think that if you do these outside pieces, you'll be fighting fire with fire. All those are nonlinear approaches to cybersecurity that scale, that are cost effective, and give you a chance to close the gaps, to address all the issues that I brought up here. And it comes from, I wrote this post, there's a link there. This presentation will be on SlideShare. I've never given this presentation before, and I never give the same talk twice. So I'll put this on SlideShare. All this is my up to the second summary of my research. But I saw the same thing. We have actually only some fundamental patterns in cybersecurity. I think only 3. That all these hundreds of things and hundreds of types of attacks and hundreds of types of defenses, all of them boil down to just 3 things. And if we do the 3 things and we use nonlinear techniques to implement those 3 things, you can do it. That's the new cusp of cybersecurity. Because the end game is complexity management. That's it. That's all we're doing in IT and cybersecurity right now. And anybody whoever's best at complexity management, whether that's the bad guys or the good guys, will win. That is your job. You have no job for the rest of your career except this, complexity management. And it means reducing it, making the formerly complex simple. And so the cyber domain today exceeds the grasp of our organizations, the way we've structured it. So we got to restructure it. And so the question I ask is, what is the simplest, most holistic route to getting to that maturity curve? What do we do? Now, there's more than one route here. There's no one good answer. I have my answer, but this is mine. We need a new approach that synthesizes these down into a new layer of abstraction that's simpler. Piecemeal techniques, what we're doing now, will fail, is failing, not working. You saw those budgets increasing, right? Piecemeal techniques do not work. Real cybersecurity architecture will. And so I believe, this is my report, it's free, you can find it online. It's just my answer to this, but it's having a total view of the network, it's having long-term reputation data about who is a threat and who is not, that's accurate, and continuous behavioral analysis. I call this applied threat intelligence. I've worked with John Kindervag, the inventor of Zero Trust, Tony Scott, the former federal CIO of the United States, on this research paper, actually. So this is not my just ideas in some tiny corner. This is something along these lines is the future. And it's fighting fire with fire. It reduces all the complexity down to 3 things, that if we do it in every place in our organization, we're okay. It will continuously defend this with no gaps. That's the new cusp of cybersecurity. If we continue on the current path, we will fail. And so, here's another view of it. And again, I'll go through the charts. But I believe this is a sustainable end state for now. And it will work with quantum. It will work with everything except for insider threats. That's the only thing that we don't have a defense for yet. We just don't. And but at least you can take care of everything else. So to wrap up, we cannot be overtaken by exponential factors. We will fail. We need a holistic approach to complexity reduction. ATI is an example, but there's other ways of doing it. And we must climb to the simplest fitness landscape, the next level of how we think and defend. But these breakthroughs exist to allow us to do this now. But that means we have to move out of tactical cyber defense and into system thinking and rethinking, and we have to replace the network stack to be closed. But we are I believe, at a new dawn of cyber. If we're willing to change our thinking, we have to get off the path that we're on, but it is doable. So that's my latest strategic thinking. I hope it frames up the rest of the day and tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Good. Yeah, please stay here. So, thank you for a great presentation. I believe, at least I had a lot of questions, but the problem is we're a little bit short of time. Yeah. So during the lunch break, here's Dion. You just grab him and ask your questions, because I have the opportunity now to just pick just one. And about the AI, obviously, the most trendy questions are about the AI. So how to automate the protection, and have you heard about European AI Act? So are the regulations not already regulating not to use such things for etc.? So what are the trends in terms of trying to regulate that and trying to use that versus?
AI will arrive in two ways with cybersecurity. One, through our vendors are going to be providing AI for us. They'll do a lot of it. But we will have special attacks or special areas in our organization that the vendors don't cover. We will have to use AI ourselves. We will use the latest generative AI frameworks. And the other piece is the AI Act and EU. I study that quite a bit because it's a model for the world. And it says, don't use AI in things that are human critical. So you will not be able to use AI in cybersecurity in healthcare and other places like that. That's going to be a challenge. And I hope the regulation evolves. I think it might once we learn more. But you can still use AI if you're not one of those like life critical, human threats, avoid them. You can use AI in cybersecurity even with AI.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.